Welcome back to our special broadcast on the 2020 Democratic field. Just before the second set of Democratic primary debates, we made a prediction here on this show. We said that some of the Democratic campaigns have actually died already. They're zombie campaigns. They're over, but the candidates don't know it. After the second wave of debates, our prediction appears to be holding up pretty well. We think it'll stay that way. Here's what we said. 2 weeks from right now, 20 Democratic candidates will assemble on a stage in Detroit, Michigan for the second wave of presidential primary debates. Officially, all 20 candidates will be running for president. But don't be fooled. Some of them, like Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, are actual contenders. At least theoretically, they could win. You can't say that for many of the others in the race. These are the zombie candidates. They're long expired, but still lumbering around pretending to be alive. As usual, the geniuses in the press corps are the last to know. They always are. You'll probably see articles, long articles, and segments on television about candidate Joe Biden. How's he doing? That'll last for at least the next 6 months. But keep in mind, as you see these pieces, it's all a mirage. Joe Biden's campaign is deader than disco. It all happened so suddenly. In May, Biden seemed to dominate the Democratic field. And then, one day, a reporter asked him a throwaway question about China. Here's what happened next.
Vice President Biden, do you have a comment on the Chinese tariffs?
I'll answer this question. The answer is yes, I do. The president has done nothing but increase the tariffs, the debt, and the trade deficit. The way you have to proceed is we have to have our allies with us. It's not just us. We have to keep the rest of the world together. Secondly, labor should be at the table, as well as our allies, because that's the only thing. And the fourth thing we should do is be focusing on the things that, in fact, I've been talking about for a long time. China's greatest violation is the way in which they steal our intellectual property. We should make it quid pro quo, as I've told when I was dealing with Xi Jinping. It should be simple. Here's the deal. You say that if, in fact, anything has to be owned 50% by Chinese to invest in China, guess what? In America, it's the same thing. This idea of dealing with the only people who are paying the price are farmers and working people right now. He's going about it all the wrong way. A lot of bravado, no action.
Got that? No, actually, you don't have that because there's nothing to get. Not a single phrase in a single sentence made a single bit of sense. It was bizarre. It was entirely meaningless. It was pretty obvious right then that Joe Biden was not going to be president of the United States. That was May 14th of this year. That day, we called it. Ignore what they're telling you on television. Joe Biden is not going to be president. He probably won't be the Democratic nominee. He's not capable of it. There's no reason to be cruel and get more specific than that. But just watch Biden and ask yourself, really? Anyone who says that that guy is going to win a presidential election at the age of nearly 78 is either lying or deluded. Well, not to brag, but we were right, almost to the day, actually, looking back. On May 13th, the day before, according to Real Clear Politics, Biden led his closest Democratic rival by an average of 27 points in the polls. That was the apogee, it was the high point. It's been a swift decline ever since. Kamala Harris called Biden a racist on the debate stage, and he had no response for her. He then apologized for associating with other Democrats in Congress, bizarrely, and now his lead has fallen to below 10 points. In the state of California, the biggest state in the union, he is losing. Another candidate might be able to turn things around, but Biden can't. In fact, he should be retired right now, chatting with strangers at the produce aisle and having dinner with his grandkids. Instead, he's going to spend the next 6 months shedding whatever remaining dignity he has as he moves toward the inevitable humiliation of defeat for the third time. It's sad to watch. Not that Beto O'Rourke has even noticed it happening. Beto is occupied right now. Beto was living in his own private hell. Back in March, things looked very different. Beto was on the cover of Vanity Fair, which is a magazine. He was riding a skateboard. He was promising to take America back to the careless exuberance of 1993. Beto was live blogging his trips to the dentist. Everyone was pretending to think that was great. And then Pete Buttigieg showed up and wrecked everything. Buttigieg was even younger than Beto and even more glib. Uh-oh. Things started to fall apart. People began to notice that even though he uses a bogus Mexican nickname, Beto was still a rich white guy from a rich family who went to boarding school in Colombia. That's not allowed in the Democratic Party. Beto seemed to recognize it himself, by the way, maybe for the first time. Watch Beto O'Rourke grovel at the thought of himself.
You're right. There are things that I have been privileged to do in my life that others cannot. The systematic foundational discrimination that we have in this country in every aspect of life is something that I have not experienced in my lifetime. And I've had advantages that others could not enjoy. I have my work cut out for me to be a better person and ensure that I'm more mindful to the experiences that others have had, different than the experiences that I've had.
Do you regret the Vanity Fair comment? Are those mistakes? Would you say those are mistakes, being on the cover of Vanity Fair?
Yeah, so Megan,
it looks elitist? What?
I think it reinforces that perception of privilege. And that headline that said I was born to be in this, in the article was attempting to say that I felt that my calling was in public service. No one is born to be president of the United States of America, least of all me.
So what about the part-time dad thing?
Yeah, so listen.
Got some flack for that one.
Absolutely, and I deserved it.
I deserved it. And with those three words, the Beto for President campaign died a well-deserved death. Nobody who apologizes for his family, for being himself, for simply existing, is going to get elected president. If you hate yourself that much, no matter how justified that hatred is, people have trouble liking you. A new St. Anselm College poll of New Hampshire voters shows Beto O'Rourke getting a total of, drumroll please, 0% in the first-in-the-nation primary state. 0%. Nobody in New Hampshire likes Beto O'Rourke. Ouch. But again, well-deserved. Another candidate out of the race. Kirsten Gillibrand ought to be celebrating this. Fewer candidates to compete with. Unfortunately, she can't celebrate because Gillibrand just killed her own presidential campaign. It happened last week in Youngstown, Ohio, famously one of this country's most economically depressed cities. A woman came forward to ask a simple question of Senator Gillibrand. She said, "My community is falling apart. People are dying. They're impoverished. So why is the Democratic Party lecturing me about white privilege?"
The Democratic Party loves to throw around terms like white privilege. Now, this is an area that across all demographics has been depressed because of the loss of its industry and an opioid crisis. So what do you have to say to people of this area about so-called white privilege?
So this might have been an opportunity for Kirsten Gillibrand. For years, she's hopped on every ludicrous fad the Democratic Party has offered, no matter what it is, from the Me Too hysteria to seizing guns from law-abiding Americans. Just this one time, Gillibrand might have distinguished herself by resisting and choosing the obvious truth over left-wing orthodoxy. But no, she was afraid to. So Gillibrand did what she assumed she had to do. She stood on the stage and lectured a struggling woman from Youngstown, Ohio, about her white privilege.
Your suffering is just as important as a black or brown person suffering, but to fix the problems that are happening in a black community, you need far more transformational efforts. So if your son is 15 years old and smokes pot, he smokes pot just as much as the black boy in his neighborhood and the Latino boy in his neighborhood, but that black and brown boy is 4 times more likely to be arrested. That's institutional racism. Your son will likely not have to deal with that because he is white. So when someone says white privilege, that's all they're talking about.
Imagine saying something like that to someone from Youngstown, Ohio. It's absurd. And it's not just absurd, it's cruel. You'd have to be a nasty, cold person to say that. And Gillibrand is. Voters can smell it. She's done. And then there's Cory Booker. Cory Booker's presidential path was simple. Be the dollar store version of Barack Obama. If Booker could be almost as cruel, almost as likable, almost as historic as Barack Obama, maybe he'd be almost as presidential, too. That was the calculation. But Cory Booker's hopes died in the worst possible way, live on national television. He went into the first Democratic debate with a plan. He was going to answer an immigration question in Spanish. How's that for clever? It would show his cross-cultural appeal. Booker's almost 50 and went to Yale Law School, but pandering in Spanish might make him look hip. That was the hope. Unfortunately, someone beat him to the gimmick. Beto O'Rourke, of course, had the same idea. He went first. Cory Booker was not happy. That was obvious to everyone watching.
Necesitamos incluir cada persona en nuestra democracia. Cada votante necesitamos.
La situación ahora es inaceptable. De presidente ha atacado, ha demonizado.
Ouch. When you're the only man in America that Beto O'Rourke can dominate, it's over. Sorry. Better luck 4 years from now, Spartacus.